Today I'm going to talk a little bit about using washes as your first coat of paint, specifically this color Payne's gray here. The majority of my figures start out with a wash using this color. This is one Payne's gray, this is another brand's version of Payne's gray, so you can see that there's a variety of colors based on the brand. Payne's gray is a black that has a little tint of blue, so obviously a lot more blue in this one, a little more black in this one. So when I say wash, what I'm talking about is mixing your paint with a little bit of water. So it's a very wet application, and then basically what you do is pat it off with a rag. So that's a wash, very watery, and then you're removing some of the paint. So there's a couple reasons that I do this. The main reason is that it really accentuates the shadows. So by putting this base coat on first, what happens later on is if you do a lot of dry brushing or different colored washes on top, all of the little shadows in here definitely pop out. Also, when you layer different transparents, you can build up a lot of nice texture. So it's a really nice way to make your piece look a little bit more real, as opposed to a lot of flat, static, opaque colors. So with this piece, for example, you could see that the black really defines the shadows. So if you come on top of it with a lot of dry brushing, you're preserving those shadows and really creating contrast and just bringing attention to the form and the 3D nature of the piece. So when you go to buy a Payne's gray, the first thing you'll notice is that there's a variety of different colors. These are 5 different brands here: Golden, Winsor Newton, Liquitex, Utrick, and Blix Artist Series. You can see that some of them have a lot more blue. Again, here's the Golden, the bluest. And then for the blacker ones, you have the Utrick and the Blix Artist Series. So what I do is I just have one of each, and then I can really just decide which one I want to use depending on what I'm painting. This particular figure I know is going to have a lot of greens in it, so I went with the Golden, that's the bluest, because I know that all those colors are going to complement each other. Same with this figure right here. This I also did with the Golden. This is going to have a lot of purples, so again, something that is going to complement the blue. These Cloud Spirit figures, I'll often use the Payne's gray that has the most amount of blue, because the end result is that it's supposed to be a cloud, so it does have a lot of colors that will complement the blue. These 2 figures here, I want them to look a little more toy-like, a little more cartoony. So I will use the Payne's gray with a little bit more black. It definitely adds a lot more contrast. Here's a piece where I used just a straight black wash because I wanted a super high contrast. And then these little bug figures, I also used the black on. These I want to be very kind of like dark and moody and creepy. So generally on these bugs, I will start with the black. Here's a couple versions of the bugs where I actually did a black wash on top of a blue wash, and then on the other one, a blue wash on top of the black wash. Again, when you're building up layers and layers of washes, you're just really going to get a lot of nice, subtle texture. So when you get something like this, you just can really see all this cool detail and discoloration and blending of different colors, which works great on something like a bug if you're trying to mimic like that kind of transparent bug shell that sometimes you see. Most of the time I'm using the Winsor Newton Payne's gray. It's not too black and it's not as blue as the Golden. It's just got a little tint of blue. In the real world, if you're looking at shadows, you're never really going to get a pure black. So that little tint of blue is going to just add a little bit of realism. These pieces with the fingers, I've just recently started doing a wash with a Van Dyke brown. And the reason I do this is because a lot of colors on this piece, especially the finger, really go well with the brown. Here's a piece I just finished painting, and you can see that with the wash, it goes in there and really highlights all of the little details, the eyes, the eye rings, the mouth, definitely the circle in here. So again, like I can come on top of this, on this piece, I did a lot of stippling here, I did a lot of dry brushing on here. You know, you could see too that you can, when you do dry brushing, you get to keep the wash underneath. So again, it just makes the piece look, it just gives it different layers of colors. On this piece, I dry brushed a couple different transparent and opaque paints on top of the wash, which really kind of gives it this aged, weathered look. The C3PO head too has a lot of different layers, washes and dry brushed. So in part 2 of this wash tutorial, I'm going to do 2 demos. I'm going to demo these 2 guys, both with washes. Show you all the different little tricks and techniques I use to do this. So stay tuned for part 2.
Don't panic, don't jump me, don't stop the just rap. Don't panic, don't jump me, don't stop the just rap. Don't panic, don't jump me, don't stop.